Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, in my business career, it seems to me that this economic miracle that we've enjoyed here over the last certainly 70 years, 75 years, was built on innovation, capital formation, and the rule of law. And this concept that we're talking about today, this vertical integration, by the way, is not a consolidation. I think that's very plain, and we need to remember that in the committee. But this economic miracle was built on transactions just like this in other industries. Vertical integration is nothing new. I personally have participated in it in order to compete, not to dominate. Size today doesn't necessarily correlate to dominance. When you talk about innovation and technology changes like we're talking about today, in this industry particularly, the consumer has benefited from the aggregation of the ability to deliver, as Mr. Stephenson said in his opening comment, they want to provide the most content to the most people at the lowest cost. That's called capitalism. If they don't do that, they won't be able to compete. Mr. Cuban, you said something earlier that really resonated with me. You commented about watching TV.
Yes, sir.
And watching young kids today and how they consume input is totally different than when we all grew up. But I think sometimes being in the Senate is like watching TV too. Think you're doing something, but you're really not doing much. And so I hope that today will be a little different. And I want to get your perspective because you're in a unique position to have a unique perspective on this transaction. I would have thought you would have been a witness for an anti-position against this deal. And I want to talk about your HDNet experience and the roadblocks you had to innovation in getting your content out there. And are you concerned about the combination and the size of this deal harming your ability to be creative and innovate?
Well, let me give you some background. I own Access TV and HDNet Movies. Access TV started off as HDNet, which was the first all high-definition TV network. And it was absolutely independent, and we continue to be independent. And let me also add something. I mean, Senator Klobuchar suggested that because I own the Dallas Mavericks, that improved my ability to get carriage for Access TV and HDNet Movies. Well, Time Warner Cable is the incumbent cable network in Dallas, and I have not been able to get carriage there. So I've faced the challenges. I also own Magnolia Pictures, which is a movie distribution company, Landmark Theaters, which has 300 screens and is geared towards independent movies, and have produced movies through a company called 2929 Distribution. Some of the movies were Enron, the Smartest Guys in the Room, which got nominated for Academy Award, and Good Night and Good Luck. And Good Night and Good Luck, as an example, we weren't big enough to distribute it, so we worked through Warner Brothers to distribute, to get full distribution. We have to compete. As an independent network, I feel the pain that Ms. Ziman feels. At Access TV, we gear ourselves as a music network geared toward the 45 plus. We don't like to tell our advertisers that, but that's who watches more TV. And it's a challenge for us to get distribution. But with the new methods of distribution, like DirecTV now and others, Sling in particular, that has opened the door. In the past, the distribution was constrained, as Ms. Ziman mentioned, because of bandwidth. You couldn't put on another high-definition network, and particularly with standard definition, which took up even more bandwidth. And so now, with new methods of distribution, there's new hope, and there's more hope for independent networks like ours. And I think this merger opens those doors. As an example, on DirecTV now, Access TV is distributed in their $35 bundle. HDNet Movies is not. We've got to do a better job at HDNet Movies to convince them to carry us. That onus is on me. And so, to your point earlier, it's very competitive. It's a free market still in a lot of respects, and I think this combination opens doors. I think they recognize now that bandwidth is more available through online offerings. They can support more independent networks, more minority-owned networks, and we've seen that start to happen. And I think the combination of them owning content, there's a lot of things when we look at online content and particularly television distributed content, and we say, why don't they do that? And it just makes perfect sense for us to have remote DVRs or other features. And as a content owner, it's like, I'd love to offer those features as a smaller content owner, but until the big guys start doing it and set the precedent, us little guys don't get to offer it. So these new precedents that are set, I think, will really push the way for better services and more consumer-friendly services, and really expand the ability for independent networks to compete.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Bewkes, could you talk about what factors today add friction to your ability? This is pre-deal, before the deal, as you exist today. What causes friction to your ability to innovate, and how would this merger with AT&T help your content developers provide better and quicker and cheaper content for AT&T consumers?
Okay, thank you, Senator. The main friction now is that we have to put our networks through the existing cable satellite distribution plant, which had a certain technological ability to it. Only recently did it have the ability to do video on demand. And increasingly, we're competing against video being delivered over broadband only that has full two-way video on demand, and where the broadband services have the direct retail data of what you're watching, who you are, where you're buying your stuff. So it implicates advertising and subscription. What we've been trying to do is to, and we did it with HBO first and then with Turner second, but we really haven't been successful in the broad 100 channels we've all got in our homes. We tried to make our channels all video on demand in a way where you could go as a viewer and search back and forth, watch full seasons, really get the same, because there's more and more networks and content available. You need to be able to search for it the way you do on a Netflix or on an Apple TV or that kind of a thing. Most of the distribution companies, particularly cable companies, have not uniformly offered that. And the way that American consumers get a change in their habit about something as important as television is it has to be consistent across all the channels, and it has to be national. And we think if we can get this going, competition with lower prices, better, smaller bundles, more effective advertising can bring more competition in all of these areas. We don't obviously, and we can't, determine what all the other media companies do. We don't have that big of a market share. But if we can put a competitive innovation in the hands of consumers, we think consumers liking it can get those changes to be universally adopted. That would give us a chance against these giant technology companies that, by their own definition, have massive global scale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have other questions I'd like to submit.